Shabbat Shalom. Many of you know that I typically begin a Shabbat message or a sermon with a joke, an anecdote, a story about my kids, or a song. But there are certain subjects that are no laughing matter, topics that are no joke. So I'm going to start by asking you to respond verbally to the cues that I'm about to give. I'm going to hold up a series of photographs, and when you see the picture, I want you to say the name of the person in that picture. Today, I'd like to speak with you about the importance of knowing her name. This is Brooke Neville's, Matt Lauer's accuser. This is Linda Joy Traits, raped by Bill Cosby. This is Jules Bindi, sexually assaulted by Harvey Weinstein. Now we know the names of our ancestral matriarchs. We invoke the names of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah 3 times a day in the Amidah, which is the central prayer of the Jewish worship experience. We invoke their names at precious moments of blessing. We say their names out loud, acknowledging their strength, their bravery, courage, and resilience. How many of us, though, know the name Dinah? In this week's Torah portion, Parshat Vayishlach, we uncover a dark, twisted, and unfathomable historical record of the rape of Dinah. Dinah is Jacob's daughter. She is one of the few women in the Bible whose name is not tied to matriarchy. Her life is largely unknown, but it is her legacy that gives us powerful lessons and whose name we must know. In Parshat Vayishlach, shortly after the reunion of Jacob and his brother Esau, the Torah seems to shift gears unmethodically and seemingly out of sequence. The Torah teaches, now Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah, went out to visit the daughters of the land. Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite chief of the country, saw her and took her and lay with her by force. Dinah is raped by Shechem. Shechem is royalty. He's the prince of the Hivite people. Midrashic commentary suggests that Dinah endured this traumatic act in public and that no one came to her aid because they would not stand up to someone in a position of power. Paralleled with today, we know this happens in Hollywood, in politics, in business, and yes, even in religious institutions. People in perceived positions of power exact that power over and over and over again without challenge or consequence. Now let us explore the sequence of events that unfold after Dinah is raped. Chapter 34, verse 3 says, being strongly drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob, and in love with the maiden, he, Shechem, the rapist, spoke to the maiden tenderly. Torah commentators like the Radak, Rabbi David Kimi, a 12th century rabbi from France, interpret these verses to mean that Shechem, after defiling Dinah, spoke to her with tender compassion and love. Already we see the early formation of blaming the victim, of placing some level of responsibility of ownership on Dinah. Shechem, the rapist, proclaims his tender love for Dinah. He even sends his father to negotiate with Jacob for Dinah's hand in marriage. Jacob, up until now, is silent on this matter. The Torah says that he awaits the arrival of his 2 sons, Shimon and Levi, to take action. And then the Torah goes on to say, and Hamor spoke with Jacob, saying, my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. Then Shechem said to Jacob and Jacob's sons, do me this favor, and I will pay you whatever you tell me. Dinah's siblings, upon hearing this, say, we cannot do this thing, to give our sister to a man who is uncircumcised, for that is a disgrace among us. Only on this condition will we agree with you that you will become like us in that every male among you is circumcised. Dinah's siblings' issue is not with the fact that their sister has been defiled. It is with the fact that the act was committed by an uncircumcised man. And so what happens? They do it. All of the Hivite men come to the public square where they are circumcised with the promise of Jewish women. And then the Torah says, on the third day when the men were in pain, Dinah's brothers Shimon and Levi, they put Hamor and Shechem to the sword, took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. And then the other sons of Jacob came upon the land, slain and plundered the town because their sister had been defiled. In reading the account of history, we find that the Torah and its commentators seem to suggest that somehow there can be compassion in abuse. While most of us reject this outright, we know that we haven't evolved far enough over the past 5 millennia. Perhaps you remember the recent case of Chanel Miller. Chanel was raped while she lay unconscious behind a dumpster by Brock Turner. While Chanel endured the aftermath of her assault, in which she describes 3 nurses standing over her with a camera pointed at her separated legs, being swabbed, poked, and prodded, her assailant, Brock Turner, got a mugshot and a 6-month prison sentence. The judge, in explaining his leniency, said, obviously, a prison sentence would have a severe impact on Brock. And I'm ashamed to say that this judge, Aaron Perkursky, is Jewish. Well, Your Honor, I pray that you fix the crack in your windshield so that you can see moral clarity ahead of you. My friends, I do not know what it's like to be a woman because I am not a woman. I do not know what it's like to suffer from the psychological trauma of a sexual assault because I have not been the victim of a sexual assault. I do not know what it's like to have to live with the pain of being comforted by someone who has hurt you deeply because that has never happened to me. But what I do know is how to be a father to 2 boys who will wake up every single day knowing how to respect women, knowing how to respect every living thing with equal parts of their being. What I do know is how to demonstrate real love, deep, caring, affectionate love to my boys. What I do know is that what we are fundamentally missing is the courage to defend true victims. We lack the moral gumption to protect innocence, and we arguably don't have what it takes to rise up against abuse. And so here is what I believe we must do. We as a society, as a Jewish people, must begin to remember her name, so that her story will influence history, his story. So that her name, her story, her legacy will be one of truth and justice. There can be no tolerance for abuse disguised as tenderness, no justification for the imbalance of power between men and women, no acceptance of victim blaming, and most importantly, we cannot allow the incompetence of others to silence the voices that need to be heard. And so on this Shabbat, in the name of Dinah, may we be blessed to know her name, know her story, for her story is our history. Shabbat Shalom.